I went to public school and I turned out fine. I can't tell you how many parents I've heard over the years who say a similar argument like this. I guess the argument goes that they're a functioning adult holding out a steady job, therefore school was fine for them. The problem with this argument is that those individuals don't know how much better their life could have been had they done something else. And so it's silly for them to say that, well, I turned out fine, therefore public schools are okay. This is a logical fallacy. But we hear it all the time, and this argument isn't going away. People feel like they turned out okay, therefore they can send their children to the same institution and their children will turn out okay as well. Of course, the main problem with this argument is that schools are much different than they were 20, 30 years ago. There are social media accounts dedicated to sharing the crazy stuff happening in classrooms all across the country, with libs of TikTok and others showing how teachers are now using their positions in the classroom as a kind of bully pulpit in which they can drive their agenda and push their propaganda. The other problem is that the quality of education in schools has deteriorated significantly in the past several decades. There's been repeated congressional attempts to try and improve things. There's been all kinds of state standard revolutions with Common Core and the rest trying to fix the problem. The problem with this is that we continue to produce generations of adults who are incompetent, civically illiterate, apathetic, don't know what's going on, and yet who look back on their school career and think, I turned out fine, therefore, I can send my children there too. I fail to understand why so many people settle for mediocrity. And I don't use that word lightly. There was a council put together 4 decades ago of education stakeholders all across the country trying to assess how government schools are doing. And their conclusion was that there was a rising tide of mediocrity that threatened the very foundations of our society. Those are not easy words. Those are not nice words about what was happening 4 decades ago. The question you and I have to address is whether things are better today than they were back in the early 80s. And I think the question answers itself because it's so obvious. So if things were mediocre 4 decades ago, what word would you choose to describe the state of schooling today? I can think of a few colorful ones that I won't use, but things have definitely degraded. And yet so many parents out there will say, I turned out fine, so I'm going to send my kids there as well. If you're anything like me, you don't want to be part of this substandard degradation of quality. You aspire for something better for your kids. You're willing to invest the time and search out opportunities and try and find what works. It does require time, it does require energy, but it's worth it, and we need to do it. I am a product of public school. I went to school the entire time. My mother apologizes to this day. Homeschooling just wasn't a thing in California in the 80s, and so it never really crossed their mind. And sure, I turned out okay, but I wonder all the time how much better my life would be, how much more advanced my career would be, how much more knowledge I would have, because I hated school. I didn't really acquire a love of learning until after college, when I had the time and the curiosity to explore what I was interested in. And I had to learn to love learning because it was a new process for me. No longer did I have to learn what I was being told to do, to memorize things for the test, to have to pump and dump, for whatever quiz was coming up. I could just focus on things for my own sake. And it was an amazing process, but one that I discovered too late in life. The real problem with this statement that I turned out fine, so my kids will be fine as well, is that it lacks imagination. People can't be curious about how much better or different their life would be. They assume the best of intentions to a school system that has wildly changed in the past few decades, and they think that everything will be okay because they're going to trust authority and delegate the responsibility to educate their children to someone else. Now, it is a lot of work to take that responsibility on, and whether you do some type of really intentional private schooling and a really good model like an Acton Academy, or you're educating in the home and really making sure that you can customize the curriculum for your specific children, the important thing is recognizing that every child is unique. Every child has different strengths. We know this. Any parent who has more than one kid knows this. So why would we think just because we toughed it out, just because we survived public school, that every one of our children will thrive in that environment as well? Chances are, of course, they won't. Some of them will miserably fail. It'll be a horrible experience. Some of them might be bullied. Others are gonna, get into things they shouldn't. We shouldn't assume that just because it was okay for us, that it will be okay for them. So if anything, this is a plea for intentionality, making sure that we're customizing an education experience experience for all of our children that is uniquely suited to their diverse needs. This is why homeschooling, done the right way, is so important and an amazing opportunity for children to learn in a way that speaks to their unique desires and skill sets and curiosities. So no, just because you turned out okay or just because I turned out okay doesn't mean our children will turn out okay as well. That rising tide of mediocrity has been crashing upon the shores of our society in recent years, and we're paying the price. So mom or dad listening out there, let's together be intentional. Let's take matters into our own hands. Let's provide our children a superior educational experience, one in which they can thrive, not just survive in a school system, but have a process, have a system, have an experience that is suited directly to them. That is worth investing in. That is something that we will see the fruits of in the years ahead. That's something that excites me, and it's something that will excite each of our kids as well. All right, you guys, hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to see other videos on education, parenting, and how to talk to your kids about the ideas of a free society, make sure to subscribe.